the Iceman wins at Daytona. Our Jim Roller drives the ice in Minnesota. And the Grand National Motorcycle Champ puts himself on ice in Texas. We've got the action on television's fastest half hour.
MotorWeek Illustrated is brought to you by Dodge, makers of Ram Tough Dodge trucks, and by Dodge cars that will revolutionize your perspective of the road. We are Dodge, an American revolution. And by Valvoline, makers of Turbo 5 and other fine motor oils. Now, from Atlanta, here is Dave Despain.
Hello, everyone. On the eve of the $1 million Daytona 500 stock car race, Bob Barsha is standing by with all the latest from the Speedway. Ken Squire, Steve Potter, Jerry Garrett, and Helen Casey all have Daytona stories this week. And I stopped off at the motorcycle races en route to Daytona last weekend. We have Jim Roller and Chris Economaki on the road in this jam-packed half hour. First to Daytona, where the Fords of Bill Elliott and Cale Yarborough head the fastest field in history for tomorrow's 500. Winston Cup champ Terry Labonte, the Iceman, won the Busch Clash last Sunday, but will start from the back tomorrow based on the results of the Twin 125 qualifying races on Thursday. This afternoon, the feature attraction, late model sportsman cars and a lot of Grand National stars. Bob Barsha, bring us up to date.
Well, Dave, this week the late model sportsman regulars were quite vocal in their displeasure over the involvement of the Grand National stars in big money sportsman races. But today, Grand National regulars swept the Goodies 300. Jeff Bodine, starting on the front row, nosed out Bobby Allison, who came from 27th starting spot by 2 car lengths. Thursday, in the Twin 125-mile qualifying races, there was lots of action, but few surprises. In race 1, Bill Elliott lived up to the promise of his 205-mile-per-hour qualifying speed, winning by almost a lap. Challengers wilted under Elliott's pace. Terry Labonte, number 44, burned a valve trying to keep up, and Elliott was only a speck in the distance when Neil Bonnet cut a tire, leaving second place to teammate Darrell Waltrip. Despite the big win, Elliott thinks the 500 will be a toughie.
Every race I've ever run is a tough race. You know, you got a lot of things going through your mind. You wonder if a car's going to finish or something's going to happen in front of you. Feel like a car's competitive. You know, it depends on what the other guys do also.
Cale Yarborough couldn't or wouldn't duplicate Elliott's performance. He led the first half of race 2, which was slowed by this 5-car pileup. Trevor Boyce, number 64, Clark Dwyer, and Randy LaJoya, number 07, plus late arrivals, number 17, Ken Reagan, and Dean Roper, all took wild rides. David Pearson moved to the front at halfway. He stayed there until the last lap. Then Yarborough shot Pearson down with his patented last lap slingshot. Cale has used that move to win the last 2 500s. Behind the 2 streaking veterans, 2 youngsters were making news. Phil Parsons goes low on Harry Gant for 3rd with near disastrous results. Those 2 get sideways, and Kyle Petty squeaks by, vaulting from 5th to 3rd. Gant and Parsons both gathered it up, but will start from 10th and 12th, respectively. Despite Elliott's domination of race 1, Yarborough thinks this year's 500 will be a dogfight.
I don't think it'll be anybody running all alone Sunday. You know, you'll have twice as many cars in the race, front-running cars in the race Sunday as you had today. So anybody wants to run up front, there'll be somebody that'll challenge him, I'm sure, Sunday.
The front 3 rows are split by Fords and Chevys, Kyle Petty making his best start ever in the 500. But watch out for these 4 Chargers to come to the front in a big hurry tomorrow, with Grand National champion Labonte leading the way. Yesterday, Darrell Waltrip held the spotlight after winning the 1985 International Race of Champions season opener. Waltrip went from 4th to 1st after a wild last-lap crash. That's Tom Sneva in white spinning to a second-place finish, while the rest of the leaders are scattered around the infield. Waltrip told us what he saw and how he made it through the melee.
It looked like either Cale's car started to spin, or else Sneva may have touched him and got him spinning. I couldn't tell for sure. When Cale's car started to spin, it backed over and hit AJ's car. Then that took Cale and AJ to spinning. Sneva tried to go between them and couldn't, and he started spinning. And all this time, I'm back there like this. And when I come out, I saw the checkered flag. So that's about all I can tell you.
A.J. Foyt, who went from first to third in that crash, put the blame squarely on Tom Sneva, saying, and we quote, "Sneva just ran out of brains, as usual, and ran into the back of Cale. There just ain't no sense in that," close quote. Dave?
Off the track at Daytona, a lot of speculation about NASCAR short tracks at Bristol, Virginia and Nashville, Tennessee, both owned in part by California industrialist Warner Hodgdon, who has filed for bankruptcy. Former Bristol track owner Larry Carrier says he'll personally guarantee the prize money for 2 Winston Cup races this year. But at Nashville, no such guarantees exist. The drivers have become outspoken in their criticism of the track, and NASCAR will decide next week whether to cancel or move the first of 2 Nashville Winston races, perhaps to the Mile Oval at Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Now, the first Winston Cup short track of the new season runs next weekend in Virginia. Here on TBS Sports, we'll bring you live flag-to-flag coverage of the Richmond 400 next Sunday, beginning at 12:50 Eastern Time. MotorWeek will be live next Saturday at Richmond, and when we come back, I'll take you to the Houston Astrodome for the Crash Mart Camel Pro Motorcycle season's opener. When the Houston Astrodome was built in the mid-'60s, it was billed as the 8th wonder of the world. For 16 seasons since, that roar in the background has marked the opening of the Camel Pro Grand National Motorcycle Championship Series. In 1982 and again last year, Ricky Graham won the season-opening Houston TT and went on to claim the national championship. This year, Graham had double trouble. A crash on the first lap of the final. He took a small army with him, including his factory Honda teammate Bubba Schobert, number 67, who needed repairs. Both made the restart, but Graham was destined to crash again. You'll get just a glimpse of it left side of your screen here. The result of this impact, a compressed vertebrae in Graham's back, injured too often before in this kind of crash. He spent the weekend in the hospital. Third restart, Scott Pearson, number 95, takes the lead, while the low side belongs to Scott Parker, number 11, and we'll see more of him. Schobert has problems. A Ricky Graham crash in the right-hander after the jump. Parker, who had won every type of dirt track race except a TT, stuck to the bottom of the track. He tried this move about 3 times before it finally worked, and he zipped past Pearson to claim the first TT victory of his career. Now, it's always fun to watch Parker win. This kid literally comes unglued at the sight of a checkered flag and a check. Now we go to Saturday night action, short track oval. You met number 4, Chris Carr, last Saturday on MotorWeek. He's in a transfer spot to the main event when, boom, Ted Booty knocks the rookie down. Booty gets disqualified. Carr gets a rough introduction to the big leagues. We go on to the main event. Alex Jorgensen convinced the high line is the answer. Jorgie goes to the hay bales, holds on the throttle, and rockets into the lead. But number 6, Randy Goss, uses Parker's low line. He goes after Jorgensen. The first time he fails, but the 2-time national champ tries again. Jorgensen sees it coming, tries to get down low, but Goss takes the line away. He's got the chassis dialed in, scoots into the lead, and it's bye-bye Randy. He makes up for a Friday night crash with a Saturday night victory in his first appearance on a Freddie Spencer Super Trap-sponsored Honda. Scott Parker holds the point lead for the first time in his career as we check the numbers. Next stop for the series, the Daytona 200, March 10th. Now, Ricky Graham is not scheduled to race Daytona. He has until March 30th to heal from his Houston injuries. His next appearance on the mile dirt track at Sacramento, California. Scott Parker's Houston success, a shot in the arm for the Harley-Davidson factory racing team, which cut its budget and farmed out its racing program this year. Parker's equipment is now being prepared by the big guy with the beard, Tex Peel, and few men in racing know more about winning TTs than does Tex. Parker's TT win Friday night, the first of his career, and Tex was the first guy there to congratulate him. Remember now, Peel says TTs are the key to winning the championship. Watch Parker this year. Our Wrangler U.S. Air Force Reserve Behind the Scenes Award goes to bike builder Tex Peel. He'll get a new outfit from Wrangler. In Supercross motorcycle racing, a rutted track in Seattle, Washington last Friday night, Ron Lachine fell off while leading the first of 2 point-paying races. He knew he needed a good start in the second race to have a chance for the overall win.
You know, the starts here in the ruts is the whole race, and I knew that, and I just bared down and concentrated as hard as I could, and I came off with the whole shot.
And the whole shot was all Lachine needed. He streaked to his and Team Honda's first win of the year. In traffic at the finish, Ronnie skipped the checkered flag cross-up for a comparatively conservative no hands. His only problem in this race was on the cool-off lap. Look out, Ronnie. There's a big rut there and a guy coming from behind. Whoop, no sweat, though. Lachine a happy winner, and some lucky fans got a great souvenir. The Yamahas that dominated the early Supercross rounds were finally beaten Friday night. Then on Saturday, they lined it up and did it all over again. This time, Rick Johnson gets the start over #1, series champ Johnny O'Mara, and #6, Lachine, who again crashed in the first race. He's in another do-or-die situation. And again, Ronnie proves up to the task. California teenager zips to the front and streaks to his second win in as many nights. In fifth, Mark Barnett, who switched to Kawasaki after 10 years on Suzuki. He had second place all wrapped up, but his chain broke 10 feet from the finish line. See the heartbreak for Barney as he settles for a disappointing 5th place. Now we go back to Daytona. Our executive producer, Ken Squire, will anchor tomorrow's live CBS telecast of the 500, so the subject matter is no surprise as Valvoline presents this week's look into the pages of Ken Squire's scrapbook.
Hello, everybody. Now, another great moment in motorsports. February 22nd, 1959, the stock car racing fraternity gathered on a piece of former Florida swampland, soon to become the world's center of speed. Racing at Daytona started on the hard-packed beach sand. Then Bill France built his monument to high-performance machinery, a 2.5-mile bank tri-oval that changed the face and, more importantly, the image of stock car racing forever. The first running of the Daytona 500 would make history of its own. The final lap, Lee Petty, car 42 in the lead, pursued by Johnny Beauchamp, 73. They head for the checkered flag, joined by Joe Weatherly, a lap down. Door to door, the three cross the finish line. Who wins? It's Johnny Beauchamp. But wait. Officials, after days of studying finish line photos, give stock car legend Lee Petty a belated first place award for that 1959 Daytona 500. I'm Ken Squire. Join me next week for another great moment in motor racing.
Well, last weekend's stock car action at Daytona proved Neil Bonnet a prophet and rewarded Glenn Sears persistence. Those stories when Motor Week continues. For years, we've followed the quest of Willie T. Ribbs to become the first black driver in the Indy 500. This outspoken disciple of heavyweight champ Muhammad Ali has long professed his driving greatness, but his career has suffered a couple of setbacks, some of which were self-inflicted. Now it appears last year's third-place Trans Am Series finisher is back on the Indy path. Willie says he'll drive the new Winkleman Team Lotus Indy car in the Kart Series opener at Long Beach and the 500 next May. Al Unser Jr. had signed with Lotus for '85, but the team sponsorship fell through. Plan now is for Willie to do 2 races in hopes a sponsor can be found for the rest of the season. More from Daytona now, where 2-time Busch Clash winner Neil Bonnet proved a prophet last Sunday. Neil didn't qualify for this year's Clash, but as CBS color commentator, he said just before that 20-lap race, the key to victory is, quote, controlled, reckless abandon in the first couple of laps. As Jerry Garrett tells us, Terry Labonte knew exactly what Neil Bonnet meant.
Keep an eye on the next-to-last car in the field. That's Terry Labonte. He's about to throw caution to the wind to get ahead. To win the Busch Clash, Labonte knows he has to make a daring move to the front before the early leaders can run away from him. Here, Labonte goes to the inside and passes 4 cars at once. Diving into the turn 3 abreast, he wins a 200-mile-an-hour game of chicken for 5th place. Now he slipstreams past 3 more. In 1 lap, he's up to 2nd place and stalking the leader. Lap 5, and Labonte goes ahead for keeps with this pass of Cale Yarborough, who later blew an engine. The race's only incident came when David Pearson popped a tire and scraped the wall. After a caution for oil on the track, Labonte streaked away from runner-up Darrell Waltrip for an easy victory worth a whopping $65,000. Reporting for MotorWeek Illustrated, this is Jerry Garrett.
A week of non-stop racing at Daytona leading up to tomorrow's 500 has produced some brilliant performances, topped by that of our champion spark plug Racer of the Week. We first take you back to Atlanta International Raceway last fall. Glenn Sears wins the ARCA 150.
Glenn Sears, congratulations, your first super speedway win.
My first win, period. First race I've ever won in my entire life.
Well, unfortunately, Sears' team went bust over the winter. He got a last-minute ride for the ARCA 200 last Sunday at Daytona, borrowed a transporter, but it broke down. Glenn barely made it to the track, fired up his race motor, and it promptly blew up, launching a piston through the window of a nearby truck. Not to be denied, Glenn borrowed a dirt track engine from a friend. He figured, quote, once you close the hood, the motor don't know where it is. Well, here's where that motor and Glenn Sears in the blue 61 finished Sunday at Daytona. He went to the wire with big names Davey Allison and Red Farmer. They bumped on the last lap, and that left rags to riches Glenn Sears to win the ARCA 200. That extends Glenn's fledgling winning streak to 2 races in a row. For his performance in the face of adversity, Racer of the Week Glenn Sears now goes into the running for a new Honda Sabre motorcycle that will go to our 1985 Racer of the Year. And Helen Casey joins us now with a look at the abundance of short track activity down in Florida during Speed Week. Helen?
Dave, across the Sunshine State last week, there were stocks and sprint cars up and down the Gulf Coast. Bad weather and a poor turnout caused the cancellation of a midget meeting at East Bay Raceway near Tampa. But at New Smyrna Beach, the late model and modified stars are winding up 9 straight days of racing this weekend. Defending late model champion Dick Trickle has been the big winner thus far with 3 victories. Last Monday night, David Rogers became the first New Smyrna Speedway regular to win a World Series feature in 19 years. And Richie Evans has 3 wins in the modified division. On the clay of the Florida State Fairgrounds at Tampa, George Snyder won last weekend's USAC Dirt Car feature, and Steve Chassie took the sprint car title. Bobby Davis Jr. swept both ends of an all-star sprint doubleheader at midweek. Former USAC champ Tom Bigelow crashed heavily in the second race. He was hospitalized briefly with a concussion and later released.
Our resident hockey expert, associate producer Jim Roller, got back on the ice last weekend, and we'll go mud bogging in Cleveland when Motor Week continues. To appreciate our next story, you need to know that our Jim Roller's passion for racing is rivaled only by his love for hockey. Here's Jim's report.
My traveling schedule for Motor Week has caused me to miss almost all of the Atlanta Amateur Hockey League games I was scheduled to play in this year, much to the delight of my team and chagrin of my opponents. So naturally, you can understand I was quite excited when Dave Despain told me I was coming to Minnesota for an ice event.
But these are not the Minnesota North Stars, and our Steve Potter was the first to explain that I was here to push a throttle, not a puck. Conditions were perfect. There was ice everywhere, but the only skating I was destined to do was on 4 wheels. So with final instructions from my co-driver, Mary Sitch, not to wreck the car, it was time for my first practice. That's me with 1 headlight. Yes, I realize they don't come that way, but it really wasn't my fault. Besides learning how to drive sideways in practice, I learned fast guys kick up a lot of dust, and these cars can have a mind of their own. We also learned that Mary should start the race. She was a bit faster. But race day dawned with our car missing from the grid. Seems the very confused officials kept forgetting about us. There's probably a message there, but after some firm conversation, they let us start in the middle of the 42-car field. So with this less than graceful adaptation of a Le Mans start, my first ice race was underway. Go, Mary. Go, Mary. And did she go, moving into the top 15 by the end of her first 1-hour shift behind the wheel. So then it was my turn for a 2-hour shift, my total share of the 4-hour enduro. The first hour saw some consistent lap times, and I even passed a few folks. Then a mistake left me stuffed in a snowbank with a car covered in snow and a sticking throttle, which meant 2 more trips to the bank. Finally, it was time to turn things over to Mary. A quick check of the engine to unstick the throttle, and she was back in action. Mary turned some quick times in the final hour to salvage us a 16th place finish. By the way, hometown hero Tommy Archer of Champion Spark Plug Challenge fame won the thing, but he better watch out next year. For MotorWeek Illustrated from a very cold Minnesota, this is Jim Roller reporting.
Our weekly visit with Chris Economaki finds the editor-publisher of National Speed Sport News on the road as well, hosting a very special function. The Boys Club of Chicago's annual racing banquet and fundraiser. 900 people turned out to hear Chris and several great race drivers. Now, we like to kid Economaki about how long he's been covering races. Listen to his account of America's first car race and see if it doesn't sound firsthand.
I wonder how many of you know that it all began here, really, on a cold and blustery Thanksgiving Day 90 years ago in 1895. The very first auto race ever held in the United States started here in Chicago. A couple of cars struggled up to Elgin at about 35 miles an hour in the snow, but that was the first race.
Well, this annual Windy City Shindig has now raised over $250,000 for the Boys Club, with the help of such driving talents as 500 outside pole sitter Cale Yarborough, who give of their time to come. Grand National Stock Car champ Terry Labonte, a big hit this year. Likewise, MotorWeek Racer of the Year, Mario Andretti, Kart PPG IndyCar champion. The man who brings in the stars and organizes this fast-growing banquet, IndyCar owner Dan Cotter, and Chris talked to him.
You were the man who thought of using racing as a catalyst for charity dinner. How did it all start?
Chris, it started a long time ago, back in 1973. I was in England, invited as a guest to the Springfield Boys Club, and found that they used European Grand Prix drivers, auto racing as an industry, to support their club. And we did it first time in 1977.
What was the turnout for the initial dinner?
So I remember it, Chris, was about 70 people.
And this year we had how many?
Very close to 900. With the weather problems we had, it was a great turnout.
And to Dan Cotter, a tip of the hat for a job well done on behalf of a good cause. Finally, to Cleveland, Ohio. Last weekend, evidence that the unusual things people do with motors can be big business. Consider that the Cleveland Cavaliers basketball team drew 1,500 fans to their home arena Thursday night. Friday and Saturday, the place was sold out. The attraction in Richfield Coliseum was 750 dump truck loads of mud. The stuff was hauled into the arena after the ball game and then well watered down for the benefit of a bunch of folks who enjoy running through it, or in some cases running around it, or in other cases just standing on the sidelines watching other folks run through it or around it. There's your proof some people will do anything for money. Now, what would one of these indoor shows be without one of these, the four-wheel drive car crushers? Mud bogging rules, simple. The guy who charges 200 feet through the slop the fastest wins. Classes range from stock to whatever the imagination can dream up. Unlimited class winner, accountant Mike Zaul tells us what it's all about.
Started with a basic Jeep, and we put a 396 Chevrolet motor in it. We're developing somewhere in the neighborhood of probably 350 horsepower. The trick is to stay light and stay on top of the mud.
But Mike's creation pales in comparison to this. Silver Eagle, the world's first jet mud racer. 1,400 horsepower. This missile launches itself over the mud in just over 3 seconds. Bog or not, Dave Cook has to shut off to avoid launching himself into sublunar mud orbit. You saw it here first. That's it for today on MotorWeek. Tomorrow, the Daytona 500 rolls at 12:15 Eastern Time. Then next weekend, we follow the Winston Cup stars to the first Grand National short track of the year. MotorWeek live next Saturday from the Richmond Fairgrounds Speedway in Virginia. And next Sunday, live, beginning at 12:50 Eastern Time, flag-to-flag coverage of the Richmond 400 here on TBS Sports. You want my pick for the Daytona 500? Bill Elliott. But then I always pick Bill Elliott. For all of us here at MotorWeek, I'm Dave Despain. We've got to go. We'll see you next Saturday.